We are now joined by one of the most successful female entrepreneurs in the region. She's one of the top 50 most influential women in the Arab world. That was voted by Arabian Business. And her company made it to the top 10 most promising UAE startups by Forbes Middle East. Shua Capital recently acquired a major stake in the company. We're welcoming to the studio Ambareen Musa, the founder of personal finance website Souk Al Mal, and she is here to give us advice on how to ride this tide of inflation. Hello, Ambareen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, Ambareen, our listeners are petrified at the rising price of broccoli because Georgia has sent a stream of people going to Spinneys at the moment. So
short-term inflation just for dinner tonight.
Listen, congrats. Nice big investment from Shua Capital.
Thank you.
This inflation, this whole, everyone's talking about what's going to happen in the global economy and is Dubai going to be insulated from it and stuff. It certainly makes people think, which I suppose for a financial comparison website is a good thing because you start to look at things in a more detailed way. So we've got a bunch of entrepreneurs listening to this. How does Souk Al Mal help them?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all. Listen, I think it's been the talk of town lately. Inflation, depression, where are we going to, what's going to happen, credit, the credit criteria, whether the banks are going to give me money. So it is really the most talked about topic at the moment. What I would say is in cases of inflation where we are today, we haven't seen inflation like this for a very, very long time. And there are really three ways normally successful businesses or businesses still struggling go about. And three really horrible way, I would say, but difficult times. One is you can either raise prices, but your customers are unhappy. You can actually not raise prices so that your margins go down because your cost of goods have actually increased, which means your investors are not so happy, or yourself. Or four, you decrease costs, which means you potentially go towards things that are less quality and therefore go down a slippery slope in the future. So the first thing that normally businesses think of is those three options. I have an opinion of are these the only three options do we have, or do we have more options? I think in terms of inflation, it's interesting for business to take a step back and think about, are these really the three options? Is it raising prices, cutting costs, or do nothing? I think it's a time potentially to go back into the business and recalibrate. Rethink about really what kind of suppliers are you using and what are you offering the customer and why are you charging whatever price you are. Customers are becoming extremely price sensitive, for sure, going forward. So I think there is a matter of now taking a step back and thinking through, is the price I have right now, is it low margin? Is it high margin? Should I focus on my low margin products or high margin products? Now, there is a fine line on that because the high margin products will allow you to continue. So do you actually go, the orders you got on high margin products, do you go do that first and tell all the customers with low margin products, listen, sorry, I don't have the space right now. I can only bring high margin products in, because don't forget the inflation is not just one problem that we're facing right now. We're facing supply chain issues. Go to any shop, any store, at Dubai Mall, Mall of Emirates, everyone has supply chain issues, which is also causing major increase in inflation rates. So the inflation we're facing right now is not just more demand for goods. It's also supply chain issues we're having with China lockdown, with Russia-Ukraine situation.
Do you find that when there are times of financial pressure, people are paying more attention to this sort of thing, and that goes to the benefit of a company such as yours? Because we were talking off air about the effect of COVID on the world and on the UAE, and I think we'd all agree that the UAE probably reacted better than anyone else out there, and that has created this black swan event which has given us huge momentum and might insulate us from what's going on elsewhere in the world. So same thing, businesses that are able to identify an edge. We just had Lisa on, and her Thai restaurant. I suspect that what would annoy people a lot more is that their tom yum soup wasn't incredibly tasty, rather than it was an extra 5 dirhams. So it's, looking for these things, yes, buying the rice so that she can save on the margin, but actually focusing on the right things. So again, because I'm not a comparison site user myself, but I'm interested to know how someone could use it to to help them with their business planning and their projections for their businesses?
Absolutely. So we're personal finance on a retail side. So we focus on the consumer angle from a comparison side. So our suppliers, if you want, would be the banks, right?
Okay.
I think what you will find right now is with rates going up, people are much more careful about the mortgages they're taking. I think from a consumer's perspective, the way banks should look at us, I guess, is very much around what message are they sending across today. Consumers will suffer. The ones who already have mortgages today, they will see an increase in their rates and the mortgage repayments if the rates were a variable rate. If they're on a fixed rate, they're fine.
So there again, there's an opportunity, right? If you're a mortgage seller,
Provider.
people are scared that in 6 months' time, the rate's going to be much higher. So get in quickly, get your fixed rate mortgage now. Corporation tax coming in next year. Get in, structure your company such so that you're tax efficient.
Incredibly interesting. So guess what I did when I saw the Fed was going to increase the rates? Before it happened, there was obviously, we all knew it was going to happen. So I called my bank because I've got a mortgage here. So I called my bank and asked for a fixed rate. I'm like, listen, this is going to go on for another couple of years. I want to get on a fixed rate. And the reason I got on a variable rate 2 years ago, because rates were all-time low, right? And the bank came back to me and said, we're not giving fixed rates out anymore. And if we are, it's going to be at a 5.75% rate.
Ouch.
So I negotiated 50 basis point down instead. So it is time for consumers anyway. It is time to relook at your mortgage rates. If you're looking at going into a mortgage as well, just really think about whether you want a fixed or a variable rate.
Clearly, you've got the secret sauce because your bank actually answered your call, so kudos to you. And then secondly, you negotiated them down. How did you manage
There's
that?
an IVR of a bank, apparently. If you just say complaint, it sends you to someone. Okay. And I discovered that while walking in the bank and say, I cannot do your IVRs anymore because it keeps shutting down on me. So yeah, at some point after 15 years in the country dealing with banks, you kind of get the little tips of how to deal with the banks.
So we've got one last minute. In fact, I haven't got a minute. I'm being very naughty keeping you on. But have you got any practical tips that small and medium-sized businesses could implement now to cope with the inflationary pressures they're facing?
Look, absolutely. I think for me, the immediate response is really not raising prices or decreasing prices because that's a very short term. You need to look at long term. The inflation rate will not go down in the next 2 months, right? We're talking about, some say it could last for a couple of years. So it's really think about the long-term strategy. And that would really be about look at your current existing customers who are dead in a certain way, who are not doing anything. Try and revive them because you already got those customers on board. It costs so much more. It costs around 8x more to get a new customer than actually revive your own. So have a look at your current customer base. Have a look at the product. I would suggest any small business that have got 15 options, bring it down to 5. Really understand what your customers are really looking for, recalibrate, look at your pricing model and see it's a time to basically revamp, right? But decrease the number of options, but high profit margins.
Ambareen, as always, it's fantastic to have you on the radio. You also run a programme called The Money Doctor, which caters to both individuals and businesses if people want to have a listen to that, although obviously they only really need to listen to Starting Up. Ambareen Musa, founder of personal finance website Silkamal. Thank you so much for your time. A pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.